Hi there. I'd like to open the July 26th Willits City Council meeting to order. And Steve, could you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Present. Strong.
Present.
Weinstein.
Here.
Francis.
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Here. Public communication. The council welcomes participation in its meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone may be given an opportunity to be heard. To expedite matters and avoid repetition, whenever any group of persons wishes to address the council on the same matter, the mayor may request that a spokesperson be chosen by the group. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the city council, which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of the city council, commissions, boards, agencies will not be prohibited. No action shall be taken. Is anybody from the public that would like to come up and speak? Please state your name.
My name is Barbara Plaza. I'd like the city and the council to know that I am the original owner of 143 Franklin Avenue here in Willits. I've also been a target by Bill Schaefer. You knew when you were chief this was going on. I was held at gunpoint November 6, 2015 on my property by Sergeant McNally. You never took actions on that to make my life safe. And I want you all to know that I'm not moving out, and you should get a hold of Bill Schaefer and talk with him. You knew all about what was going on 10 years prior before I bought that property. So it should be addressed. I'm a new innocent buyer, and he doesn't need to call John Sherman up and cussing him out with vulgar language for 15 solid minutes to do something about me again in my porta potty. I own the property. I should be able to live on it without being kicked off. It needs to be addressed. You knew about Bill Schaefer 10 years prior.
Right. Sir, you raised your hand. You could state your name.
Brian Kunka, Foreshore.
Right.
Recently moved to the area in November. Just read your article. I don't know if this is the proper format, but regarding the billboard. And I have a suggestion that you might want to check into. In school, we were involved in a project with dealing with electronics, communications, smart cars, things of that nature. And maybe we might want to consider an electronic billboard. Big LEDs. The only thing that would be a really big problem is they're bright at night, so that the surrounding area would get glare. But the initial rate of return and the projected rate of return as far as the investment in working partnership with the chamber, I think that might be a pretty decent way of going, because you could program it instead of using paper. You can just program the billboard for special events, any information you want to tell the public, and within the next few years, and we've already seen it on the TV, your little home sweeper vacuum thinger is already sending out information to the companies. Well, now your cars are going to start communicating, and so what's projected, billboards will start talking to your car. Your car is going to have information on where you like to eat, where you like to shop, things you like to do. The billboard's going to take a random sampling of your cars, and then it's going to start automatically putting eat here, shop here, things of that nature. So it's a viable technology, and with the initial investment and the projected rate of return, I think it's probably something we can look at.
You know, Brian, Dusty's kind of our conduit there,
Okay.
and so we can't really discuss because it's not on the agenda, but
I understand.
I welcome the participation, and we, honestly, I will comment one thing, that we got to figure out how we're going to pay for this, and that's our big
And that's what I
problem.
was, another
But
aspect.
if you've got some ideas, go through Dusty, our city planner, and give him your name and contact information, and you've raised some good issues.
Appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
I think it's kind of cool that we can program it to tell people to get off at exit 568 or whichever.
Yeah, or
I like that, seriously.
alerts or whatever you want
Yeah.
to check.
Do I have anybody else here that would like to speak to something not on the agenda? All right, I I guess, public matters, item 3. Update from Caltrans regarding Willits area projects. Jeff Wright is here from Caltrans to speak.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to update you tonight. We'll be updating you on the current Caltrans projects that are working in and around the city of Willits. As you're aware, the bypass is complete, but the mitigation projects, we have 2 of them that are ongoing. The heavy lifting, if you will, is complete on the mitigation projects, and all the planting is complete, and we are just in weed abatement mode and plan establishment mode on those 2 contracts, and that will continue for another 2 to 3 years depending upon which contract. And so those contracts are sort of winding down, if you will. The probably most visible project for you right now is the what we call the ADA sidewalk improvement project in front of the high school, and that project is moving along well. We're getting the new sidewalks built, and the projected completion is August 23rd at this point. The majority of the work that will impact the school is endeavored and focused to be done before school resumes on the 21st, as I understand, and there will be a few days of remaining cleanup punch list work that will occur after school opens, but we should be complete, plus or minus, August 23rd, barring no unforeseen conditions at this point. The other visible project adjacent to the city is the Up Creek Fish Passage Improvement Project, where we remove the existing box culvert on what is now the frontage road, which used to be the highway, adjacent to the north interchange of the Willits bypass, and we removed the existing culvert. We've made the fish passage improvements and rock weirs in the creek, and we're in the process of the final stages of the forms for the abutments for the new bridge. And as soon as those are poured, they'll be bringing in precast eye girders and setting those in place, and the bridge construction will continue. That project is projected to complete plus or minus the 15th of October. We'll probably run, all the in-creek work will be done by the 15th of October, and then we'll have some finish-up work that will carry on for a few weeks beyond that. The other project that's happening close is the Ryan Creek Fish Passage Improvement Project on the north side of Oil Well Hill. We have 2 culverts that we'll be replacing on the south and north fork of Ryan Creek, and those projects are making their way, and also will complete approximately the 1st of November. So I wasn't sure if there were any particular questions you had. Yes.
Go ahead. My 2 questions are, first, are they really going to push that culvert through underneath the road?
Yes, in a matter of speaking, that particular project at Ryan Creek, it has, that the South Fork has 2 10-foot diameter culverts that we call ramming through the fill prism. They've turned the easiest way to say it is they've taken a pile driver for driving bridge piling, they've laid it on its side, and then it has a concrete reaction slab that it uses as a reaction force, and it physically hammers these 10-foot diameter pipes through the fill prism. And then once they're installed, they will excavate the material out from the inside. And then this particular project at that South Fork has what they call a, quote, bottomless culvert. It's a continuous steel pipe, but approximately the bottom 3 feet of the pipe will be filled with native style creek bed material and create what seems like a natural fish bottom channel in the bottom of the pipe. And in that particular location, we have 2 pipes. There's a 10-foot main channel pipe and then an overflow pipe, which is set slightly higher to handle the high flood flows.
My next question is, when all the mitigation is gone in 2 or 3 years, what is going to happen to the wells that are out in the valley?
The assumption at this point is that those will be maintained and used by the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District, who will be the land manager for the mitigation parcels, and they will continue to use those either for cattle stock watering or the vegetation planting that was done if necessary. But the hope is that once the plants get established, they won't need to be watered and they'll take care of themselves.
So the people are going to maintain it themselves. I mean, the group that wanted, is that right?
The Mendocino County Resource Conservation District has been the, I'm
Is
not
this
sure this is the right term.
volunteers or is it?
Well, it's a cooperative, I don't want to use the wrong terms here, but for lack of a better one, it's a cooperative agreement that's been established between Caltrans and the resource agencies. Caltrans is prohibited from owning mitigation land in perpetuity, and so it must be passed off to a third-party land manager. And so the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District was selected as that land manager. And don't quote me on this, but I think they will be the fee title holder on the property when it's all said and done.
So we will, if we want to do anything with what the wells or anything, we will have to contact this group of people to come up with some kind of solution to whatever problem that we possibly might have.
I think that would be the correct course of action.
Okay, thank you.
They are not volunteers, they're being paid out of a fund in perpetuity to maintain that. That was part of
Yes,
Caltrans's
there was
mitigation
an endowment fund
monies.
established to fund the maintenance of those properties in perpetuity,
Yeah,
and
there's
they are,
staff working on it.
they have staff that will be performing that,
And,
yes.
and they will be responsible for it.
Yes.
Caltrans is ultimately responsible to.
No, this other group.
Yeah.
Once it's handed over.
Once it's handed over, yes, they will be responsible for it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for that.
I have a question about the next step in the downtown changeover. Can you give me the timeline for next year for the downtown? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'm assuming you're talking about the relinquishment project for those, from
Main
Highway
Street.
20 north?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the highway relinquishment project, as we call it. It's scheduled to go to construction next summer, and
When you say next summer, are you meaning April, May, June, or you really mean like July? Or?
it's not pinned down 100% yet, but it's still making its way through the project development process. But the hope is to advertise the project to contractors to bid on in either April or May, and then it's not uncommon to take 30 days or more to advertise the project, and then from the time we identify the lowest responsible bidder, it takes 30 to 60 days before you'll actually see a contractor physically working on the ground. So based on the assumption they advertise on April 1st, it would be assumed 30 days advertisement from May 1st to open the bids, and then it would be June 1st or July 1st before we see something happening on the ground, most likely.
And how many months do you expect that process to last?
I wasn't prepared to speak on this tonight, but I apologize, but it's going to be the better part of the summer, and I'm assuming it's going to be 3 to 4 months worth of work, and it may be longer.
The reason I ask is I just want to make sure that we're helping businesses be prepared for all the changes that are going to take place. You know, for example, we've got the construction in front of the high school and how that impacted the pool or the traffic and that sort of thing, and I want to make sure that we're all prepared and how that's going to impact our community and routes of travel and the businesses that are on the main strip as well. So I imagine
Sabrina,
you'll work
we had
closely.
met with Caltrans, and Jeff was at that meeting, I believe, and we had brought up some sensitive dates, and obviously the school was a player and some other frontier days, et cetera. So at that meeting, we had brought that up and told them that the business community obviously needs to be informed. So that had taken place already. That dialogue with Caltrans had started, and I'm assuming it'd be ongoing.
Right, I'm just getting some, well, you're here before us, so I just thought I would ask some current information, make sure that things are still on track and that we're all aware of the same information, because I wasn't at that meeting, so. Yeah. I'll ask more questions later.
Okay.
So, I appreciate that you weren't here prepared to talk about the mitigation, the relinquishment project, but I assume that either you already have it together or you're getting it together, the actual work plan to minimize the impacts on the street. I mean, traffic will still be permitted to travel on Main Street during the construction period?
Yes. It's still being developed, but the concept at this point is that you'll have traffic maintained in both directions, and that'll always be the case. I believe the current concept is that we will be taking a block at a time and doing both sides of the street to remove all the existing sidewalks, make all the improvements that are necessary, put the new sidewalks in, and finish that whole block before we move on to the next block as a general concept. And then the paving for the streets will be at the very end, so we'll have all the sidewalks complete, and then once all the sidewalks are complete, as a general, very general statement, we'll pave from one end of the project to the other.
In one lane at a time.
In one lane at a time, and that'll require temporary relocations of traffic, if you will, so that, we'll close one lane, and as an example, they'll put the northbound lane in the existing turn lane as a temporary detour, and the southbound lane will be where it's at while they pave the northbound lane and possibly the shoulder or parking area at the same time. And it'll be a little bit of a ballet that'll have to be taken to do that paving work, and some of that will be up to the discretion of the contractor as to which lane they pave first. And but there will always be both lanes of traffic at the same time. And I believe there is a requirement that's being discussed that's not finalized yet, that they'll have no more than 2 consecutive intersections closed to facilitate turning movements and whatnot, so people don't have to go significantly out of their way for the turning movements.
So basically, traffic would be kind of zigzagging down the street.
Potentially, yes.
And then I remember when we talked about this a couple of years ago, that the sidewalk project, that you were going to provide temporary bridges into the businesses while that sidewalk is being worked on. Is that?
That is in the development concept for the project, yes, is that, we'll be required to maintain access to businesses. There will be obviously some times where they'll have to remove that. For example, they'll remove the existing concrete, and while they're physically doing that, there would have to be some limited access. But then once it's removed, there would be a temporary, for lack of a better word, gangplank access to the business. And then when it comes time to pour that new concrete, there'd be some limited access. And there is discussions with the various business owners. Some prefer to have night work, some prefer to have day work, and so there's a coordination effort that's going on with our designers and the businesses to try to figure out what that is, so that can be adequately referenced in the project to make the contractor aware of what those preferences are, so that they can have this ballet, if you will, to get the work completed.
So just to reiterate for our viewing public, the contractors and Caltrans are in constant contact with the business owners to coordinate all of this.
Yes, and there's, I know that they're talking about having a minimum of 72-hour notice before they physically begin work in front of a business, and obviously, we'll try to have more of an outreach to have more fluid communication with those various business owners.
Okay, one more question if I can. Can you talk about the Sherwood Road intersection, how that's going to play out? And again, I get that you're not...
The Sherwood Road project is going to be happening concurrently. At this point, there are 2 separate projects, so depending upon how the bid results come in, it could be potentially be the same contractor, could be a different contractor, but they will be happening concurrently. And it's been discussed, and it will be a part of both contracts, that there's what we call a cooperation clause in the contracts, where the various contractors, assuming they're different contractors, are required to coordinate with each other and cooperate to make both projects happen simultaneously. And then there's coordination required for traffic, so that they won't have. They'll try to the best to minimize impacts to the traffic, but with that much work going on in close proximity, we know there will be impacts to the traffic.
But obviously, it will not be shut down. I mean, traffic will be able to flow through that intersection.
Correct. The intersection will remain open, and there's staging that will occur, and temporary intersections will be built to shift the zones, and there's several different staging plans that are involved as part of that project.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ange.
Yeah,
Sorry.
a couple of things.
Sorry.
Well, one question was regarding if you're going to do the sidewalks block by block, all of this, talking about next summer, not construction, but you're not going to do the paving until the end where all the blocks all at once. So what's going to be there when you're kind of tearing out the existing paving, putting in, I wonder is that gonna be dusty or gravelly, or it's?
It'll be,
Is there gonna be
there'll be,
parking?
it just depends on the particular location, but generally speaking, when they tear out the existing curb, they'll have to deal with all of the subgrade improvements, which could include putting some gravel down, and there are provisions in the contract that they have to have dust control, and so if it is a dirt situation, there will be frequently applied water to ensure that we have dust control going on. And then, once the new sidewalk is poured, in between that time and when the final paving is done, there will be temporary pavement, whether it be a cold mix pavement or a hot mix pavement, is somewhat up to the discretion of the contractor, and they can decide what fits their budget best. But there will be pavement maintained so that we don't have issues there.
Well, needless to say, I think all of us and all of the public are very concerned about the impact that's going to have on our whole downtown business folks. It's just going out of, we want you to go the extra mile, or whatever you want to call it, to really minimize the impact on all those businesses and the public that wants to be able to shop.
That's our desire as well, is to
Yeah,
minimize.
it's just,
the impact.
it's a major whammy after also getting the whammy of the bypass itself. One other thing regarding that project is it's a little bit closing the barn door after the horses have all gotten out, because 4 of our really old heritage trees were taken out. Are there we're not going to lose any of our other street trees while this is all going on? We're going to protect the existing street trees, I hope?
There is a letter that has been issued to the city council and Adrian Moore that addresses the trees that are currently planned to be removed as part of the project that need to be removed as a result of requirements to ensure that we're meeting ADA compliance. We have a meeting that we're in the stages of trying to schedule to further explain that letter and potentially have a walkthrough with the council members if necessary, or with the city manager, or whoever the right person is, to further clarify that letter and say these are the trees that are planned to be removed as part of the project because they physically are in the way, or there's not physically enough sidewalk width to meet ADA standards, or whatever the various issues might be. We have a letter that's been sent to the city that we're awaiting a response from on that, and also we're having an additional outreach effort with the city to try to explain that better so that we can go through that, identify what the issues are and why those trees must be removed, and try to make sure that we're all on the same page and understand what the circumstances are.
Yeah, I think I would request that come to the full city council so that not only us council members, but also the public have an opportunity. I mean, it may not be something we can change, but I'd like to make sure that we're on the same page before trees get taken out.
Jeff, are you referring to the packet that Mitch sent me?
Yes.
Okay.
And then one final thing I'd like to go on record, that I think doing the Sherwood Road project, well, first of all, I think the Sherwood Road project is questionable to begin with. It's a earthquake fault line, and you're talking about a 30-foot retaining wall, and you're not buying a huge benefit by this enormous construction project. So I have written letters to Caltrans during the EIR process saying that I thought that was, that there should have been some alternatives looked at. But knowing that the project is being given a green light and going ahead, I really question whether it's a smart idea to do it simultaneously with the Main Street project. There's going to be major disruption from both projects. Why, overlay them on top of each other? We're going to have so much inconvenience already. So if there's any reason not to phase that project at a different time, I think it might be a wise thing to consider.
I would agree, considering how many locals live in the Brook Trail community. It's a large portion of the Willits community trying to come down the hill, and then when you get to town and being further congested, and I can just imagine the pressure that we're going to be feeling. We were already settling in for that first year, and economically we're being hit pretty hard. And then next year we're looking at, tourism is going to struggle when you have a downtown that's being renovated. It's going to look great afterwards, I get that. But the council's got to be proactive in figuring out what they can do to reduce the impact. And so we're gonna be looking to you and the city management to help provide to ensure us that that's happening. And so I would suggest that maybe we look at the idea that maybe those two projects don't happen at the same time. I don't know if there's any leniency or any thought that could maybe happen, not at the same time, but I'm concerned.
That's a little bit beyond my control. You know, the project schedules are established by our project management branch, and obviously there's two different schools of thought on that. You have high impact, short duration, you know, and build both projects at the same time, or you have a longer term impact that's spread over the 2-year perspective as you've suggested. And so which one's the smarter thing is, you get 10 people, you get 10 opinions as to which is the right way to do it there. So I guess I would suggest that if the council has a strong feeling to that they would send a letter to our project management people requesting that. And I'm not sure that there's anything that can be done, but they can receive that letter and see if there's any possibilities there.
Well, you know, this is not really intended to be a discussion about that.
I'm next. And you're aware, the businesses in the community are going through an ADA thing that's going on about the grade that's coming into the sidewalk. And as a business owner, you have not, Caltrans has not given us any information on where the grade for the sidewalk is going to be so that we can adapt our particular ADA compliance that we have to do in 120 days to where it's going to be. And you understand what I'm saying? In other words, we're going to have to make, this year, we're going to have to make our pad or wherever it is out of our building to the sidewalk. And if we don't know where that's going to be, we're either going to have a bump there or we're going to have to grind it off or whatever. Because you're going to come through a year later or a half a year later and come up with your grade for the sidewalk. And the businesses are forced by the law that we have to have ours done by that time.
I understand what your concern is, and what I understand from our design people is that they are matching the existing sidewalk grade at the face of the buildings or 6 inches from the
6
face of the
inches out.
building,
I
depending
understand
upon
that.
where that is. And so theoretically, you know, if you're trying to figure out what your conform is, whatever that existing sidewalk grade, your threshold is, would be matched with the improvement. And then all the other requirements to meet ADA will carry from that
So
towards the street.
you're gonna grade your sidewalk to whatever we come up with?
I'm not sure that I understand that
In other words-
in its entirety, but what we are planning is 6 inches from the face of the building, whatever the current grade is, that is going to be matched, and so that will not change.
So it will be the same as it is right now?
That's what I understand, yes.
Okay.
And our designers would be much
Because-
more educated to ensure that's the question. If you have a particular location, I would encourage you to reach out to our designers to confirm that's the case.
Okay, and I can get that from Adrian?
Mitch Andrus is the designer on this, and Adrian should have his number, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Adrian, is there a way we could get that information either on our website or something so that there's no surprises?
Sure.
So that whatever, I mean, I would hate for Larry to do his part and then a year later go, whoa, we didn't say that or whatever. No, we have it out there, not that you would, but that way everybody knows going into it what it is. So, okay, Ron.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
No, I was just going to remark on what Sabrina and Madge had said. I mean, we're not discussing it now, but just to let you know, it's not a unanimous feeling about having this thing stretched out into two separate projects. I agree that the smartest thing to do is let's feel the pain for a short period of time, get it done with, and then we move on.
Okay. Jeff, unless you have anything else, unless anybody else has a quick question, otherwise.
No, it sounds like you want us to hold questions.
No, just want to know, do you have another question? Otherwise, I want to see if,
Well, wait, I would like to have at a later date, like an update, because it sounds like maybe you've gotten some information that,
me and Larry went to a meeting where they just kind of gave a broad
Oh, okay.
thing. And in fact, one of the things I was going to add is that, and I don't think it was Jeff who spoke at that meeting, but they said that once it goes out to bid, they'll actually be able to fine tune when things will go out, what time. So it's to be able to say 72 hours, but to be able to say March such and such, unless it's, or, you know, June such and such, or July such and such in this area. And because of July 4th, we discussed, so if there are any dates that we see or that we should bring up, that would be important. So if there's days that they shouldn't be out there working, we obviously stress to communicate with the school and so, because we stress the same thing you guys are talking about, that the impact to the businesses, but as far as trying to coordinate and get the notices out so the businesses know when it's gonna happen. And that was the big complaint in the past, has been we didn't know it was gonna take them.
yeah.
So, I'll just open it up to anybody from the public who would like to ask Jeff.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned weed abatement. Did you look into imminently? Is
Hey,
that-
Bear, can you come up and,
Sure.
so the TV land can. Jeff, if you could step aside while he asks his question, so that, thank you.
I'm Bear Kemeroff and live here in Willits, and I have several questions, but weed abatement, is that going to be mechanical, or are you going to be using herbicides?
It'll be a mechanical process, and it's to control the undesirable species and the mitigation plans to ensure success of the new plants.
Okay. And my other question is that you're talking about more trees coming down Main Street. Do you have an approximate number, how many trees you're going to cut down?
I believe that the letter that was forwarded identified 20 to 24 trees that are potentially going to be removed because of the interference with the ADA requirements.
And that's almost all of them.
That's a lot.
You're mostly going to take out all the trees on Main Street.
20 to 20.
Is there,
I don't know what the total count is, so I'm not.
is there a way to avoid that?
Well,
If I could respond to that. So we are setting up a meeting with Caltrans and city staff to basically do a walking survey of Main Street to identify each tree, you know, as they come in terms of how they fit into the project or not, what kind of difficulties they may create if they stayed, and do that assessment. And we have invited Dave Watts to participate in that with us.
Thank you.
all right. Does anybody else from the public have a question or a quick comment for Jeff? All right. Thank you, Jeff.
The only thing that I forgot to mention that I wanted to add is that we've been in discussion with Adrian in regards to some additional planting that we're going to do as part of the ADA sidewalk improvement project. The cork oak trees that were removed, we are going to be obtaining some cork oak trees to plant back in the general proximity of where they were before, taking into account the design considerations that required the removal of the old trees that were there. So we'll be planting 4 trees to replace those trees, and then the manzanita plants that were removed in front of the tennis courts, will be replanting those at some point on a 5-foot center is the concept right now that will be finalized in discussions with the city in front of the tennis courts. And then there's, I believe, 4 other planters adjacent to the high school that we're trying to determine what the city would like to see planted in those planters. So that was one thing that I omitted earlier, I apologize.
Appreciate your coming, talking to us.
Thank you for having me, and have a good evening. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we got public comment in.
Good.
So,
You.
all right. Well, now it's come to that part of the night, notice of public hearing, discussion of possible adoption of proposed proposition of Prop 218 water and wastewater rate increases effective August 1st, 2017. So procedure-wise, do I open up the hearing or do I?
Maybe you have a presentation first,
Yeah.
or?
So, if you could state your name for our audience out on TV.
Good evening. My name is Eric Helgeson. I'm a consultant with Bartle Weldon Associates. I was just looking for
Pointer?
something to control the presentation. Oh, thank you. So yes, as was stated, we worked on the water and wastewater rate studies, which led to the issuance of the Prop 218 notice of rate changes for both the water and wastewater rates. The objective, and before I say that, I want to thank the council for their input and also thank staff, especially Susie, for all the help getting the study completed and getting us to this point. So the objectives of the studies were that the enterprise funds be financially sound, so we can continue to provide a high level of water and wastewater service. Also that the rates are legally compliant. And finally, we wanted to have a customer focus to make sure that the rates were as low as possible and also having smooth, predictable increases over time rather than having a rate shock to the customers. So for the water rate study.
Some folks, man, I just want you to speak up a little.
Oh, sorry.
And the microphone doesn't amplify, so it's.
Okay, I'll get a little louder then.
Thank you.
So for the water enterprise, this is the projected cash flow. The main expense is cash funded capital, projected to be about $4 million over the next 5 years. To be able to fund capital, operating expenses, pay debt service, and maintain prudent reserves, we are recommending an annual revenue increase of 4% each year. Now, it's important to keep in mind we're assuming an inflation rate of 3%. So really, we're asking for 1% above inflation. We strongly recommend the increases in the first few years, but at the end of the 218 notice period, the 218 is just the maximum rate that the council can adopt. And at the end of the last couple of years of the notice period, depending on water revenues from if weather-related demand, the capital improvement schedule, that can be evaluated and see if the financial position necessitates those 4% increases. And so next we looked at how are we going to recover the revenue, and we do that through the rate structure, and we want to make sure again the rate structures are compliant, and then there's a balance between revenue stability and conservation. So keeping that balance in mind as we propose the recommendations. And what we recommended was that the single-family rate structure goes from 4 tiers to 2 tiers. The reason for that, primarily, that we feel 2 tiers better reflects the current system and the current demand patterns of the customers to be more compliant with Prop 218 requirements. Additionally, we're also recommending that the city be treated as a non-residential customer, to also follow the 218 interpretation. And finally, the tiers are fewer tiers are going to create more stability in the post-drought world, with increasing fluctuations in demand. Depending on less revenue from the more volatile, high-use bills will make revenues more predictable, but we still feel that by having 2 tiers and having people continue to pay somewhat more as they use more, there'll still be a conservation signal. So the tiers we're proposing for the residential rate structure are 0 to 600 cubic feet, and then anything above 600 cubic feet. And 600 cubic feet is the average water bill for residential customers. And we also don't recommend a change to the non-residential structure. We think the uniform rate is fine. So how will this impact residential customers? The median bill, customers will see increase of about a little less than $2. When you have a bill of the average bill, it'll actually be lower than what it was. And the average summer bill of 12 CCF, you'll see about a $1.12 increase, and that's just due to the alignment of the old tiers and the new tiers is how you get that change. And these are the 5-year proposed water rates. And again, these are what were noticed in the 218 mailing, and these are the maximum rates that the council can adopt if there isn't a protest to the 218 notice. And finally, we're also recommending a change with the private fire connection charges to bring in line with AWW, American Water Works recommendations on the amount of cost that puts on the system. So now onto the wastewater enterprise.
Could I just ask about that, the fire rate schedule?
Yes.
It's a big bump there, and who are the people that affects?
They're large businesses. It's meters 4-inch or greater, and so those are customers who use a lot of water. It's actually probably won't be a very significant portion of most of their bills, and it's just reflecting the capacity that 4-inch fire meter requires the system. By having the capacity available, it costs a certain amount of money to service each year, and that just reflects that cost.
And the reason for those larger meters is for fire prevention?
Yes, they're private fire protection. So the American Water Works Association estimates that it costs about 20% of a water meter. The cost of capacity for an equivalently sized water meter is about 20% when it's a fire meter. So let me rephrase that. Sorry. A water meter requires a certain amount of cost to serve that capacity. So a 4-inch water meter requires all the pipes and everything that goes to it. But there's demand going through that a lot more frequently. A fire meter is just there just in case there's a fire. It connects to usually sprinkler systems, but the system still has to account for the fact that there is the potential capacity to use water, so that carries a cost with it. And so the American Water Works Association recommends that says that cost is about 20% of the cost of an equivalently sized water meter.
And that's a monthly rate?
Correct.
How many of these water meters or fire meters do we have? How many people are going to be impacted? I'm concerned that it's such a big jump. I'm wondering what portion of our consumers are going to be impacted by this rate.
There are 51 of those meters, and the equivalent of a 4-inch meter is about 25 times the capacity of a single family home. So we're talking pretty large customers.
Is it typically manufacturing or?
A number of business. I can't speak
Lots of
to
different
exactly
reasons. Okay.
what they are, and I will say that those rates are pretty much in line with what Ukiah has right now. The Ukiah rate for a 4-inch is, let me find it here, is $110. So it's pretty close.
Is there any history on why we were so low? Anybody know? No?
John may have something to add.
There is a little history. There was a point in time, decades ago actually, that it was thought that you had to encourage these large buildings to put fire sprinkler systems in. In the last couple of decades, the building code has required fire sprinklers in any building over 12,000 square feet. So to put it in perspective, we're talking about buildings over 12,000 square feet or buildings that involve manufacturing or hazardous materials.
Thank you.
And the reason why we're recommending that is again with Prop 218, having customers pay the cost of service that they're being provided.
Rod has a question.
Yeah, the private fire charges, now, there are some new homes that have been built in our housing development that have sprinkler systems as a, this is not the same thing. Well, why is that? They're smaller, or is it just not the
All of the
same?
residential stuff is serviced through the domestic meter,
I'm sorry, through the what?
through the domestic meter.
Okay,
They're not separately metered for the fire.
but it is a bigger meter, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not a 4-inch.
I mean, it's more than a 3/8 inch meter, I believe.
Yeah,
We've
they're bigger.
actually gone from 5/8 meter,
Oh, a 5/8.
5/8 meter to a 3/4 inch
Okay.
meter. And that's really just to serve the potential for capacity if the sprinkler's going off and you have domestic use at the same time.
Right, so those customers would be paying the 3/4 inch monthly fixed charge.
That's correct.
Okay, so the other thing is, going back to the fire charges, the big ones, the water that they use, I assume, would be charged under the non-residential tier 1 rate?
Correct.
And that would be only used for fire purposes. I mean, that line is dedicated.
Yes, that line, I mean, they're really, ideally, there would be no use. to
Yeah,
those
right,
lines.
right. So basically, what we're looking at is a pretty big bump in the monthly cost, but that's it, just for the meter itself. We're not really increasing, the cost for the amount of water they're gonna use.
Correct, typically, there should be no water going through that
Right.
line, and it's just changing the fixed monthly amount they're paying as part of maintaining the capacity of the system.
And if there is, the insurance company will probably cover it anyway.
It does help with insurance.
Okay.
Any further questions, or?
I guess go on with your
All right.
presentation.
All right, so now we're at wastewater, and this is the projected cash flow for the wastewater enterprise, and the main cash expense, well, one of the main cash expenses, which you can see different from the water enterprise, is the debt service. The wastewater has a lot higher debt service from the recent treatment plant and then the required upgrades. So what we're recommending is 7% increases for the next 2 years, then 5%, then 4.5%. And these were really kind of the absolute necessary increases to maintain debt service coverage with the debt that is currently there for wastewater. It requires a 1.2 coverage ratio, and at least the first year increase is absolutely necessary to maintain that coverage ratio. And then going forward to maintain that ratio and then fund your operations and capital. Also the budget, I believe there was a last year, or the 16 fiscal year, there expenses exceeded revenues. So it's also keeping pace with the inflating costs.
And I know we might have talked about this in the prior meeting, but at one point, will we have the same leeway as in the water fund? We say the first year and the second year, we're at 7%, but then let's say the third year, we'd be in a position to say, well, not 5, but 4 that year?
There is some leeway, but really with wastewater, it's going to depend on the capital schedule, but the leeway is really going to be more how much debt you have to issue to fund your capital program. There really isn't much leeway as far as available cash to be used for
All right, I think we covered that, but.
Yeah, I had a question about both the cash and the debt on the wastewater. It looks like the next 2 fiscal years, we are increasing both the cash and the debt service, and then in 2020 and 2021, 22, cutting back a little bit. And I'm concerned about 2 years in a row of 7% increases, because that means 2 years from now, people are paying 14% more and a little bit more. That's a big hit, and people are not, it's already a lot of money. So a lot of people are going to be really stressed financially to meet that. I'm wondering if there's any way we can defer some of the capital investments into year 4 or 5 and therefore not do 2 7% in a row. If there's some way we can reduce that hit, I would sure like to look at it.
Well, like I said, the first increase is completely necessary.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm willing to go for
Yeah.
the first year 7%, but to do 2 in a row really, it just starts to look.
And I believe a lot of the capital is associated with timing with the transportation projects.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
Yeah,
Right.
so they're actually,
not a lot of leeway there.
yeah, and, I mean, over time, your wastewater rates, I showed a survey last time, you were pretty much right in the middle, and this will not shift you'll still be pretty much right in the middle of the surveyed utilities.
Yeah, I saw that, but, yeah, people aren't looking at how we stand relative to UCI
Yeah.
or whatever, they're looking
Yeah.
at their bill.
Yeah. But what it does say is that it's still a reasonable amount to pay for a very essential service, is what that indicates.
Yeah. Well, it's really a question for staff, if there's any part of the investment that we're making in the next 2 years that could be shifted, but, yeah. And as you said, these are maximums, so if there's any way we can do that, we still have discretion to do
And you can
that.
look at next year, look at your financial position and see what it is indicated that the requirement for revenue.
Yeah.
All right, so referring to the rate increases, the annual rate increases, and as Jerry mentioned, I know we discussed this before, but just for, review, this is a 5-year plan,
Yes,
and we cannot extend this beyond 5 years, correct?
correct. Yeah, according to Prop 218, you need to re-examine it every 5 years.
So if we look at this and the water, and we add up the percentages, we come out with, well, I won't do it, but X percent over the 5-year period. And we can either go according to the schedule and do it as we laid it out for the water and the sewer, or we can do less than what's projected, or we can shift the percentages from year to year, as long as we stay within the total for the 5-year period.
Yeah, each year you can adopt up to the rate stated for that year in the 218 notice.
So for example, in fiscal year 18-19, we're looking at a 7% increase, and 5% for the following year, then 4.5%. So if in 18-19, we decide not to go with 7%, but let's say with 6%, we'll say, does that mean that in 19-20 we can do 6%, or in 20-21 we can go with 5.5%? I mean, is that the way it works?
As long as the rate is below the amount published for that year on the 218 notice, you can go anywhere up to that.
Okay, so we cannot do what I just said. In other words, take this 18-19 increase, not impose the full increase, and then move that to the next year, because that would bring the following year up above what we've published.
You can never go past your maximum
It-
amount.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah, so-
dollar amounts,
Yeah,
not
it's-
the percents.
Correct, it's
The
not the
dollar
percent,
amount.
it's the dollar. it's
So
the-
we could go 739 in 1617.
Oh, I see, okay.
And wait until 2021 and then do 970. So we.
Okay, so that
we're
might
not
work
going
out to be 6%, 8%, whatever.
Yeah, the
whatever.
percents are.
So it's not the percentage, it's the dollar figure that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your maximum charge per
Okay.
EDU that is
Okay,
that tier.
gotcha.
So yes, we can shift the percents.
Yeah, I've been on the council long enough to remember when we've gotten frugal and we decided to give the ratepayers a break. And we went for several years without any kind of an increase, and then lo and behold, we had to sock them with a 10% increase one year to make up for it. So I think we need to keep that in mind too. It's a little bit is better than,
And our philosophy is to try to, and if you keep to the schedule, it's keeping it as small and predictable as possible rather than having that rate shock of a
Yeah.
large increase. And I will say the monthly change is going to be less than $5.
Yeah, these are annual.
Yeah, those are annual rates.
Larry has a question.
So is the reason that the rates are going up is because we have the debt that we owe, and that's both in water and sewer.
Water, there's a very small debt. It's not really contributing to the necessity of a rate increase. But on the wastewater side, there are larger obligations from that
To
wastewater.
the USDA.
Yes.
that's the annual.
Okay, so in 2023, then we'll have to do the 218 again.
Well, probably 21, 22. And near the end of it, you'll probably want to do the 218 notice so that you're.
Because our debt is how long?
If I remember correctly, is it like 2040?
Yeah,
For-
20.
it-
So we have to raise the rates till 2040. That's when the debt is over?
Not necessarily. What is happening is the debt coverage ratio is basically the net income to your debt service payments, and it has to be greater than your debt. That your net income has to be greater by your debt service payment by 1.2 times. And so the debt service payment will not change for the course of the obligation. So.
But if our operating expenses
It's
go
only
up
your
in the
operate, yeah, if your operating expenses go up, but that, once you hit the ratio, as your operating expenses go up, you'd still need to raise rates to just pay for your operating anyway. So the duration of the loan will not be the main driver of further rate increases.
Okay. All right. Just continue.
All right. So these are the proposed rates for the notice period, and as we've kind of stated, these are the maximum increases the council can adopt for each fiscal year. The maximum rates the council can adopt for each fiscal year. And again, with the wastewater, we strongly encourage adopting the rates for each of the years. And with that concludes my presentation.
And is it appropriate to ask him to explain the 218 process as far as protests and all that? Could you give an overview of that?
Absolutely. So the 218 notices were mailed out, and there was a 45-day period for protest, and it actually extended a bit longer till today. This is the public hearing, which is the culmination of that notice period. So customers will have the opportunity to for public speaking, and And then there will be a final opportunity to submit written protests. At that time, all the written protests will be tallied, and if they do not exceed 50% plus one of all parcels, then the council may adopt up to the rates published in the 218 notice. And if you have any further questions, I can answer those, or then I believe it's the public comment period.
So question, would we open up the hearing for both, or are they combined?
For both, we did a combined notice about the
Okay.
sewer and the wastewater, sewer and the water, and so protests, I believe, would have been to one or both of those services, and so we should have an open hearing now and allow public comment as to the proposed rates.
If you'd like to have a seat, we will.
Thank you.
At this point, I will open up the public hearing on our proposed rate increases, and any member of the public that would like to speak is welcome to come up. And please state your name.
Maggie Graham. I have this. I've also been charged with figuring out our individual water meters for the Grange Mobile Home Park. And we get one bill, the Grange gets one bill, and that has to be broken down. We have individual meters that read gallons, so we've been reading those. And now what I want to know is, are these proposed monthly rates going to be changed? For instance, the base meter rate, base water rate, it looks like it's going down quite a bit. Right now, it's been at $211 for the
What size meter do you have?
2-inch
For the whole,
meter.
coming into the park?
For the whole park?
The mobile home park, yes. There are 13 homes behind the Grange, and we've been paying a base rate of $16.25 each, and now at this rate, it says $187.99, which would go into effect August 1st. And is that true?
Yes, that is true.
So that's lowered quite a bit.
Yes, the base rate is actually going down slightly.
Nothing ever goes down, huh?
Lucked out.
We also were trying to mitigate as the rate structure has changed. We increased the volumetric proportion slightly more to basically we wanted low use customers to have less of an impact as we reduced the number of tiers. And so that's why the base rate actually went down.
Okay, and then the proposed water rate for 2017, as of August 1st, says it will be $7.24 per unit. And that stands, even though this is just proposed, and you were talking about this process that sounds like it could go on out into the future, but is this schedule going to stand now?
These are the published rates. These are the maximum rates that the council will, if there isn't a protest, these are the maximum rates that the council will change.
We can't go any higher.
We can go less, but not more.
Pardon me?
We can go less than these amounts, but not more.
Oh, okay.
We have some discretion, although the recommendation is to go to these rates so that we don't, go into debt and then all of a sudden have to hit all at once in a future year.
Right.
So, and these are designed to spread those costs out over the 5 years and cover our costs. Is that accurate?
Yes.
The way it's been working is when I moved in there, we weren't collecting at the Grange. I became the treasurer for the Grange, and I discovered we weren't collecting near enough from the tenants to pay for the water. So I reworked it. They weren't paying any base rates. One lady was paying $2 a month. I got it all worked up, got a formula going, and then we were reading the meters every single month and billing every month, and it was just a disaster. We have volunteer
Meter readers.
people working over there and so on, and so I did an average of the year, and we've kind of firmed it up, and then every few months we check it to see if we're staying about the same. So I'm in the process of doing that right now. And I just want to know that I'm in the ballpark. I have to consider, are we collecting enough to cover the water bills every month or average and so on. And I think we're okay. If this proposed rate goes in, I got it all figured out.
And Maggie, the whole idea, because I think I said it one of the last meetings, we've had in the past where, well-meaning on the part of the council, they don't want to raise rates, so then you end up in a deal where I think they're recommending a gradual increase as opposed to, don't raise them for 3 years and then sock you to get the last one. And it may be politically expedient not to do that, but then.
Pay the price later.
Yeah.
Yes, all right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Melissa Wolty. I live at 208 East Valley Street here in Willits. And I think that the water rates look like they're going up in what would be considered a steady and equal way. But those sewage rates are already high because they come at one, they come on your tax, with your taxes, and that's a big lump sum. And it's going to be $230 at the increase every year, but at the end of this time for everybody. And that's for people who are retired on a fixed income. That is big. And then they'll be, at the end of the 5 years, there's going to be more of that. And I guess my question is, are there more cost-effective ways? I mean, we're looking at moving into some big money for those sewer rates. It's going to be between, it's going to be over $80 a month in 3 or 4 years. And when you add that to all the other things that are going up just as much, and this is larger than inflation, and when you're on a very limited income, you're not going to get that. You're not working to get those increased rates. And Willits is not a wealthy place. It's not Ukiah as far as incomes go. And my question is, are we going to be able to keep those people who contribute to our community and live, a good life here in Willits? And I'm not saying that there isn't I'm just being the other side of the consumer side of a very difficult issue, because infrastructure does have to be maintained, and I understand that you guys have worked very, very hard, and I'm very grateful to not live in a place where the sewage runs down the street. So this isn't a statement that we shouldn't do anything like that, but I just, during these rate increases, to remember that we live in some really scary times right now, that incomes aren't rising, that there is an increasing number of retirees who are going to have a limited income for a very long time as they live longer. And are they going to be able to pay these? Because there doesn't look like there's an accommodation for those low users. Like on the water, I'm already down really low, but I know that I have some control over about the basic amount of water that I use, and therefore I have some control over my water bill. But that control isn't there as far as the sewage bill goes, and I just wanted to represent and protest the big increases over the next 4 or 5 years, and I think that it's a lot. And I don't know if I'll use the word excessive, because I gather from you it needs to be done, but it hurts, and it's going to hurt, and that's going to be one of the other things I just wanted to say for people who might be trying to stay in their home. We're not going to see that $200 a year pinch for people.
Melissa, you need to wrap it down.
Oh, my 3 minutes is up? Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Did you want to speak to anything?
Yes, I will say the annual increase is actually $52. It's going from $739 to $791.
No, I meant at the end of the 5-year period.
Oh, at the end of the 5-year period.
At the end of the 5-year period, it'll be about $230. Yeah.
Yes, and we try to keep that in mind, and also costs are inflating at about 3%. So yeah, the rates were created to keep in mind the people's ability to pay, and we calculated the absolute minimum amount to maintain, to stay in compliance.
Yeah, that's what I heard in your story, in what you said. I did hear that. But that doesn't mean I'm not at the consumer end.
Oh, absolutely.
So I want to say, ouch!
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Social Security people haven't gotten any cost of living increase in the last 2 years.
We're getting one next year. We're getting one next year.
We are?
Yeah. Got pretty good with it, too. 3%, I heard.
Sir, you had raised
Not
your
enough
hand
to
during the
cover.
presentation. Is there, did you?
No, everything's been answered. Very good.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Did you?
Yeah, I just noticed something, and maybe you can clarify it. On the wastewater charges, the proposed rates, under the volumetric charges, you have the low strength, domestic strength, high strength per CCF.
That's your current structure, for 100 cubic feet. It's, for commercial customers, their strength was determined, and they either pay the minimum, which is the same as the residential, charge annually, or they pay their water volume multiplied by that rate, which is greater.
Okay, that was my question. I mean, I understand the different strengths. So this rate, the projected rate, for example, for low strength, with which is probably most residential, for 17-18 is 742 per 100 cubic feet, correct?
Correct, and actually domestic strength is 905.
Oh, okay. So residences are considered domestic, not low strength.
Correct.
Okay, so 905, that's per 100 cubic feet of water used.
Correct.
So if a typical water bill is, let's call it 3 units, which is over 1,500 cubic feet, I believe.
It's the average water bill for a residence is 600 cubic feet a month.
So that means that this $9.05 in 17-18 would actually be $45. You said I'm sorry, 600 cubic feet? Did you say is the average?
Yeah, the average residential bill, but those volumetric portions are for, it's just called domestic strength. It's really, but those rates are designed for commercial customers, so it's a little bit removed from how residential customers consume their water.
Yeah, but what I mean is the actual charge is, we're not going to be paying $9 a month for sewer fees in addition to in 17-18, the annual charge will be $791, and that'll be split up into 2 payments with our real estate taxes. And then in addition to that,
No.
what?
Those are only for high volume. If it goes over them,
No, I'm looking at domestic strength per 100 cubic feet, which is $9.05.
but it doesn't.
And how is that calculated? That's calculated on the water use,
Based on the non-residential customers' water use.
non-residential.
Yeah, non-residential.
Non-residential,
Yeah.
okay, so let me clarify this
There are
then.
2 classes.
Okay, so for the residential, what are we looking at for the volumetric charge per month?
None. The residential customers
It's
pay
a
that
flat.
fixed, flat
Okay.
amount.
See, that's not really clear to me on this chart. Okay,
Yeah.
because, we just looked at the water rate that has the fixed rate and then the variable. So, okay, so the proposed rates for wastewater charges for residential properties is only the single-family minimum charge,
Yes.
For EDU.
and that's it.
Yes, and one reason that, it's just another way to restate that is, it's the current, nothing is changing with how you're being billed for your wastewater.
Right.
Only it's going up by 7%. So no structural change, just whatever your current however you're currently billed is just going to increase. But
So the other charges, the volumetric charges that are going to be charged for non-residential properties, is there, this is pegged to their water usage, correct?
yes.
So that's where that comes in. So like, for example, the 905 for a restaurant or whatever would be multiplied by the number of 100 cubic feet per month of water that they use.
Wintertime usage, let's add that too. It's wintertime usage water. So there's no watering that's being done, right?
Okay.
So,
So if a restaurant uses, I don't know, 13 units a month or something, which is, a unit is 546 cubic feet, I believe, something like that. 700, right. So 13 units times 7, I picked the wrong number. Let's say 10 units. So that would be 70 times the $9 charge.
Can I understand, the
Is-
$7.91, for example, that's the minimum that any
Yes.
user would pay. But if they're a high-volume user and their volume exceeds the $7.91 average over the year, then they start paying a higher rate, which is the volumetric.
And as Susie said, it's the winter use because the irrigation doesn't flow into wastewater, so
Okay.
it's based on
Okay.
what you use. And
So a small business that's using not a whole lot of water, they're gonna pay the minimum rate the same as the residential.
yes.
Yeah, but a really large business that uses a lot of water, they pay a higher amount based on their volume.
they could.
Okay, $7.91 is or whatever, in the year 1718, that's the bottom, that's the floor.
Correct.
Anything beyond that.
So, anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Okay, Jim, I think I'm going to close the public hearing.
Right, I think you should close the public hearing and inquire of the city clerk whether or not she received any protest votes and what the tally of those are.
All right, at this point, I will close the public hearing, and City Clerk, I'm inquiring.
I received 6 letters to oppose the increase and 2 letters of concern. They didn't
Okay.
register it as a protest.
Okay.
And so we have, 2,200 accounts, and we need 50% of that plus 1 for a successful protest. So unless there are any other protests want to be made this evening.
I sent in a letter of protest this afternoon. I don't know if it got into the record, but my understanding is that it is not the number of protests, it's the assessed valuation of the protests. And it's 51% of the assessed valuation, not a strictly 2,200 customers. Here in this process, the landowner, the assessed valuation of the landowner votes, not the individual, and not the tax parcel number, but the assessed valuation. So I checked that out, but I turned mine turned it into tonight into the water bill collection deal. But I think you need to, if you're not clear on that, you need to get straight.
Okay. I think we're still far below.
I think you're probably still in 50%.
Could you explain that to me again?
Yeah.
Bruce, can you explain that to me again, please?
The protest vote on a 218 survey is the one vote where the landowner, assessed valuation of the landowner votes, not the resident of the property, nor just the owner of the property gets one vote. The cumulative assessed valuation, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but the cumulative assessed valuation of your water district or sewer district is, say, $100 million. I'm just making it up. I'm not sure what it is. If $51 million of that assessed valuation protests your rate increase, then you cannot proceed with the rate increase. If you had one landowner that owned 51% of the assessed valuation of your district, and that one vote said no, then I don't think you can proceed with your rate increase. Does that make sense?
Well, we sent, maybe our
Consultant?
guest presenter consultant can clarify, but I believe that we followed the direction of Bartle Wells in sending out the notices, and maybe you can clarify who received notices. And
I believe every property owner received notice.
But every property owner doesn't do it. It's the assessed value is what we understand. Is that correct?
I don't believe, I mean, I'd have to defer to Jim, probably. But
Well,
I don't believe it's this.
I think our agenda summary indicates that there were 2,200 notices that went out.
Everybody
correct?
that has a water account received one, and a wastewater account received one. So you should have received one.
And we received 6 protests plus another one, Bruce Burton delivered today, I guess.
Probably didn't get it.
But I guess the point is that correct? I mean, this is the way we've been doing it since I've been on the council. I've never heard that the valuation was a consideration. It's always been the number of hookups. So the question, I guess, is what is the correct way of assessing the protest percentage? Is it by valuation or is it by the number of hookups?
Jim, could we take a recess?
Sure.
So, at this
Let's
point,
do that.
I think it's going to become a moot point anyway.
I know, but I think we need to get the right information out. So I'd like to take a 10-minute recess.
And Eric will still be with us, because I have a question.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's fine, I apologize, I don't have
All right.
language.
Yeah, so new information.
10-minute timeout, everybody. So I guess at this point, we're going to continue the public hearing to
August 9th.
August 9th. And at
Thank
this
you very
point,
much.
we'll move on to the consent calendar.
I wanted to ask Eric a question too, just so it can come back to the next hearing, but the charges per month for the sewage treatment, the wastewater treatment, is considerably more than it is for the water to be provided to the customers. And is that typical?
It all comes down to the age of the system and the requirements to operate it. Your wastewater system has a fairly new treatment plant, which is part of the reason for the cost. But in actuality, your wastewater rates are actually more competitive regionally than your water rates.
Okay, well, I mean, that sort of makes sense. It takes more work to clean up the water than it does to provide the clean water to us, the potable water, because we have a pretty good water source. Yeah. Okay, well, that was my question.
All right. So I guess at this point, we will continue this to August 9th. Thank you for those that came. You're welcome to come back again on August 9th.
Yeah, so we have to do another 45-day thing.
So,
We're continuing the hearing until August 9th.
all right, consent calendar. The item 4.
I would like to pull C.
All right. And we have item A, council minutes. Item B, warrant disbursements. Item C, approved new job classification for administrative specialist. And item D, renew contract with Laco Associates for engineering services. And Councilmember Stratt? Okay, other than C.
Other than C, I
All right.
have a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
All right. Any further discussion? Anybody from the public like to speak on these? All right. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right, item C. Would this be Karen?
Good evening. The administrative specialist that we are looking to implement is actually a promotion so it's not an addition to the headcount. And basically, this would be an individual who This would be an individual who actually not only would kind of lead the office staff, but is somebody that often backs up the city clerk in her absence, takes care of accounting, and also takes care of payroll. So what we're looking to do is actually take the job description and upgrade it to what our individual is actually doing.
So
It's already doing these
person,
tasks.
just at a different pay.
Different classification, yes.
The position, the incumbent has been working outside of her job description for some time, and so that creates an issue in of itself. But we are anticipating some staffing changes due to retirements over the next year, and in preparation for how the department will need to be restructured and what has currently been taking place for some time. That's why this recommendation is before you.
Any other questions from anybody?
I'll move approval, or do we want to open
I
that?
don't know, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on item C?
I'll move approval then.
All right, do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Motion second, any further discussion? Otherwise, roll call.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes?
Ornstein?
Yeah.
Stransky?
No.
Mayor Kimball?
Yes. All right, information reports. And I don't see anything that stands out other than, unless you want to add anything? Not?
The ABC license application, Taqueria La Tapatia is the old Vassar's location, pizza location. And I believe that they are on target to open in the next month or two.
That's far enough away from the high school that that's not a factor, correct?
For alcohol?
Yeah.
And I think it's a restaurant, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but I mean, doesn't the
For the
ABC
liquor
rules
license.
still apply to the distance from a school?
Different rules for...
It's not off sale. I mean, I'm assuming they're not applying for off sale.
That's correct.
It's on sale.
Yeah, but the bar was not off sale.
And I believe they do have off sale at the bar.
They do?
Most bars usually.
As long as it's not a problem, yeah.
So,
But we have to do, are we supposed to vote on this, or? is
No,
this-
it's informational
Yeah,
only.
information.
If you had opposition to it, or if anybody in the public had opposition to it, we would receive that
Oh, okay.
and file those with ABC.
Well, I sort of recall that we used to vote on these things anyway, just, even though it's a matter of form, but.
No. We did used to, once upon a time.
So we're losing power.
all right. Right to appeal. Persons who are dissatisfied with the decisions of the city council may have the right to review of that decision by court. The city has adopted section 1094.6 of the Code of Civil Procedure, which generally limits to 90 days the time within which the decisions of the city boards and agencies may be judicially challenged. Item 7, commissions and agencies. The Willits City Council meets concurrently as the Willits City Planning Commission, and I don't see anything there. So item 8, city manager reports and recommendations.
All right, the first item is discussion and possible direction regarding irrigation of city parks. In my staff report, I have listed the city parks that, and what the cost is for water usage. If you reflect back onto our conversation regarding the 218 process, city departments now need to pay for their own water rather than having it written off. The parks, Highway 20 Park in particular, is a high water user. There are 2 meters at that park. And at the staff level, we've had some discussion about the potential to cease irrigation at the park. And I felt that this was an important discussion to have at the council level. That park does not have any playground equipment or other recreational facilities, although it is a highly visible park in our community. But if you look at the cost of the water usage, that's not something that's fully been budgeted going forward. So I really wanted to hear from the five of you as to what your thoughts were.
Actually, let Madge go.
Okay.
We'll let Madge go.
I think I have my hand up first. It does seem to me a pretty high price to pay for what is really just, it's not really used as a park. Some people aren't picnicking there or anything, and that's a pretty high bill. I'm wondering if, on the other hand, it is highly visible for people coming in and out of Highway 20. So I'm wondering if there's any cost-benefit analysis of putting in something more water, drought-tolerant landscaping that would be reasonably attractive but not use all that much water. It's something that I've also been wanting to consider for some of the highway bypass interchanges, to have some water, drought-tolerant, attractive plantings that would be colorful. And obviously, it would cost something up front, but it might be a worthwhile trade-off to look into that. Because I mean, I don't want to just have it all be dead grass either. It'd not be very attractive. But I don't think it's worth that amount of money to water a grassy strip that's not being useful to, or, whereas the other parks are used all the time.
So Ron, you're...
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. The park, I mean, the park really isn't used much, primarily, I believe, because there's no place for anybody to park their cars if they want to get out and stretch on the grass. I've owned the house in Willits for going on 20 years, and I've never had grass at all. And my water bills are very reasonable, and it's nice, it's pretty, drought tolerant plants. I mean, we could do something like that. You could have paths, not just, solid wildflowers, for example, but we could have paths that go through the park so people can actually take a walk if they want to. But the other question I have here is on Babcock Park, does that include the fountain?
Yes. The water in the fountain recirculates.
Oh, it does?
Mhm.
Okay, so the $3,300 does not really include the water that's used in the, or I guess the fountain would be negligible amount, wouldn't it?
It should be.
Yeah, I mean, I know we use a lot of electricity there.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, that would be my thing with the Highway 20 park.
I'd like to see us take the money that we would spend for that first year on that Highway 20 to water and put in a walking path. And we had talked a little bit at the, I think at Revive Ed, and then also at the museum advisory meeting, we had talked a little bit about some ideas about being some type of train car or something else that was reflective of Willits along there. It would be a nice little way to tie into our tourism concept if there was a walking path that attracted people to Willits, especially when we have the Highway 20 turn there to go over to the coast. So that would be my preference.
Larry?
I think that it's a way that people see Willits, and I would hate to see it just dry up. I would go for something that, paths or some kind of shrubbery that are drought resistant or something, but just to let it go to, to dry up to brown, I think would be a bad image for us personally.
Could we put that before the Revive Ed as a potential project of interest that we could brainstorm on how we could save money and make that an inviting centerpiece to Willits?
Well, I gotta tell you, I like the idea, people are coming into town, and while I agree with the train car or something, I kind of envision some sort of signage there / train car, something directing folks to our downtown area and a little
But
maybe.
keep paying for the green grass?
No, I mean, I think, but like Larry, I don't want it just to be a patch of dry grass, but explore doing that. So I'm in kind of an agreement, and that and drought tolerant, whatever we do there, so that we're not spending money watering stuff. So, I mean,
I was just also going to mention that if we were able to time the planting of some drought-tolerant plants towards November, when it gets rained in over the winter, then you don't even have to, do that initial cost of watering the new plantings. And maybe some of our nice nursery suppliers might be willing to give us a really good deal on putting them in. Maybe we get a whole bunch of volunteers to do a lot of the labor.
well, I think the only concern I have
The
just,
path is only going to be useful if it's somewhat
Yeah.
landscaped, because if it's just a bunch of dead brown grass, and the paths are not going to be very
well, and I
attractive.
guess it would also depend on how the path would be used one way or the other. Otherwise, I think, it's not like we have this money in the budget that we're gonna snatch to do something. It's just we're choosing not to water, and so it's not like we've got a budget savings, right? Because it's not in the budget, Susie?
It's on the budget.
Yeah, so it's not like we have this money to play with, it's just,
Right, but I think we're all saying that letting it die is not an option.
no, I get that. So I think we just
So
need to
it is-
recognize that there's
yeah.
no money per se.
Wait a minute, you're saying this water usage in the parks is not in the budget?
We have never paid for water in the parks before.
Well, I know that
This
departments
isn't-
have not, but there still is a cost associated with pumping that water into the parks, isn't there?
Yeah, that's apparently why we're trying to,
No. What I mean is that
until now,
we've never allocated
Money.
water usage in the parks to the Parks Department. But there has always been a cost to the city to provide the water to the parks.
Okay, but we've never charged the Parks
Ourselves.
Department.
I understand, we've never charged, but we spent the money somehow.
I think the
If we're
city
if we're
was
using the
exempt from-
water, if the
Well, we
water.
didn't spend the money because we didn't charge the money.
We
The
gave
cost-
ourselves a free ride.
The cost of providing water service has been, or was absorbed in the Water Enterprise Fund.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the cost of providing the water for the parks has existed. We've just never charged it to anybody.
Yes.
So if we do cut down on the watering of this park, there will be a money savings because we're not
the enterprise.
reducing that
And to the
to
enterprise.
wherever. To the city's budget, because we will not be spending that money to create that water. So there will be a savings.
Yes.
You
to the
may not-
enterprise account.
To the enterprise fund, you're correct.
Yeah,
You are
okay.
absolutely correct.
Now, I have to point out, the police department was paying for its water.
Right, through the county, right?
Yeah, the county got charged by the city, and then it was in the police department budget to pay for the
Okay.
utilities. So that's about the only department that was paying for it.
Yeah, but there will be a savings somewhere.
And Ron, we did put some budget in because we knew this was coming. We did put some
Right, right.
budget in for,
Snyder, was it?
I think Bud Snyder Park.
And then basically, that reduces the enterprise fund's expenditures by a bit as well, because they're not absorbing it. Correct?
Didn't you budget that in, the increase? Because I remember asking you whether or not we budgeted in the increase that we were expecting to get when the city was going to start paying. So if we then decide not to water the grass, that's going to create more of a deficit in those other enterprise funds, because we already budgeted the increase in income that the general fund would have to pay.
And I did some of them, but I don't think I did Highway 20
Okay.
Park.
But I do remember that discussion.
Well, I was just going to ask, okay, if staff can, another task for staff, but to figure out what it would take to put in some alternative landscaping and/or paths or whatever. And it may not be an instant, like we cut off the water now, but a few months down the road to have some alternative kick in.
There probably has to be drip irrigation anyway put in.
So Larry has a question.
We have a meter on both of these things that water this Highway 20 park. We have a meter on that?
2 meters.
There's
2
2
meters.
meters.
I think it's one side of the, is it?
I can't
I don't
believe
know
that there's
the-
that much, that uses
I thought
that
there
much
was a
water.
well there at one point.
I honestly don't know.
You can eliminate that and the rest of it, the rest of them doesn't even total that at all.
Pretty good there.
Grass uses a lot more.
I know.
So what I'm hearing is that there is no direction to discontinue irrigation at this time, that you would like staff to look at drought-tolerant landscaping and bring back some ideas, and actually, we could take it to Revite Ed first.
Well, I'm not sure we're saying to discontinue the irrigation, because I think the feeling is that we don't want dead grass sitting there this year.
That's what I
That's what
said.
she said.
Yeah.
But long-term, we don't want to pay to water it.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
we don't want to discontinue it.
We're going to continue irrigation
Until
while we look at some potential projects.
I had a gentleman from the public that would like, you want to come up here and,
Yeah, Brian's not good again. How about we cut it in half? Because the 7-Eleven, the restaurant there, if you've ever eaten, is a really good restaurant, it's a Mexican restaurant. But sometimes service is a little longer than expected. If you keep the part closest to the AM/PM, people use that. They'll go outside and they'll walk around or sit under the trees, or if they're going on a trip, they'll walk their dog or whatever. And then have the partial furthest away, make that drought resistant. And that way you're cutting your costs in half, and you're still having a viable park that people tend to see when they stop and get fuel. That's just an option. Because I've used the park, I've seen people use it. A lot of times the transients tend to use it a little bit too, but, it's still a usable area. That would be my suggestion.
thank you. Bear?
Yeah, I would like to make a little different suggestion, and that's that if in City Park, if instead of, before you cut down the rest of the trees, which I understand are coming down, you would plant the new trees, which is, you said last spring you were going to do as soon as the ground dried up, and hasn't been done. We'll add a little more shade to City Park now and rescue that park, which means you'll probably be able to use a little bit less water in City Park because it won't evaporate quite so quickly. And then you can transfer that water over to that tiny little park on Highway 20 and have a net, say, you can net out and not cost any more money, which is my way of getting around to saying, once again, asking the city to plant the new trees before you cut down the rest of the old ones. Just help the park a little. Thank you.
If there's anybody else, back up here.
And I just wanted to mention, if there is a well out available that we aren't taking advantage of, let's look into that.
I have that on my list.
Okay.
Yeah, for some reason I thought there was a well there, but I didn't.
Yeah, I had not heard that before, so we will definitely investigate that.
Actually, I think they're ready.
Okay.
Yeah, which, even if we took a little water,
That's a bunch of money.
Yeah.
but I don't know if it was capped years ago or not, so. All right, I think you've got sort of direction there. Okay, and
And I have some more reports.
go ahead.
Okay, so sticking with trees before you leave, Bear. We are going to have a tree planting ceremony on Friday, August 11th at 10 a.m. PG&E is going to be co-hosting this with us. And the reason for that is that they provided some grant funding for the purchase of additional trees than we would have been able to afford otherwise. So that will be at 10 a.m. Friday, August 11th.
What day of week is that?
Friday. Let's see. I don't know if any of you noticed, but we have a solar project going on this week for our rooftops here at this building. And that project is a donation to the city from North Bay Solar Company, which is owned by John Takis, who is a Willits resident. John will give you some technical information about that, but I believe it should be done this week. And at the next council meeting, we would like to invite Mr. Takis here to properly thank him for his donation. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
We will be resubmitting the ATB, which is Active Transportation Planning grant this week for a third go at the Rails with Trails project, and we'll see, how that shakes out. I'm sure that all of you have noticed our parking lot improvements over the last week. So the majority of the work has been completed. There's a few adjustments that need to be made that will be occurring over the next, week or so. John can speak more on that, but just for everyone's information, if they haven't read it already or noticed it firsthand, we swapped or reversed the ingress and egress and changed the traffic pattern within the parking lot. We added handicapped accessible parking spots and the accessible paths to both City Hall and the Justice Center. There is a bit more work to be done, but it looks good. We also have the west parking lot done. We hope to designate that as an employee-only parking lot Monday through Friday from 8 to 6, and leaving the main part of the parking lot available for the public. And then lastly, the parking lot that's to the east of the Justice Center, the police department, is going to be signed for what it's been used for, which is a non-public parking lot. It's for the storage of a couple of trailers and city vehicles, and so that, although it is accessible, it's not designated for as a city public parking lot. Any questions about the parking lot?
Are we going to leave the rest of the two parking lots alone?
The rest of the two parking lots?
There's two public parking lots in the city of Willits, one on Wood Street and the other one on 101. And are we going to leave those alone?
We don't have a plan for them as of yet. We have our CASP inspector that's inspecting various city facilities, and once we get a final report from him with his recommendations, then we would bring that back to the council for discussion.
Okay, I just want to say that you need to consider that the majority of people that live in Willits and surrounding areas drive big equipment cars and trucks. And if you try to put 3 big vehicles out here, you can't get out of the car, you have to climb out the window, because I did it today, and I didn't climb out the window, I just came in, drove and parked out in the street.
Okay, we'll make sure that is...
Because I don't want to have to do that in the public parking lot.
The only anticipated changes right now, we are in the process of upgrading the signage in those parking lots, because the signage is not adequate and not in compliance with current code.
This is the two that we have, I was talking about?
That's correct.
Okay,
We won't be restriping or changing the spacing.
okay, thank you.
Then I wanted to report that the chamber and city staff are working on a new Visit Willits tourism board. And we're having another steering committee meeting next week.
Yes, hopefully Friday.
So Councilmember Rodriguez has been involved in that effort as a member of the Revi Ed Committee. So we'll be excited to bring more information forward about that. I don't know if you want to say anything further about that.
Sure. We've heard lots of pleas from the community about there being an effort on the part of the city and an increased effort on the part of the chamber to create more tourism. And so from that was born the idea of creating a tourism board. And there was a small group of us that met, that put together a vision and some objectives, and decided how this group would come about. And we decided on 13 members on this board, and it would be a partnership between the city and the chamber, but it would be underneath the chamber's structure.
Correct.
And we would take on projects in the community that would promote Willits in various fashions. There is from maybe symbolic things that could be placed on sidewalks to talking about this being a wellness community to promoting recreation, just various ways of promoting the best qualities of Willits to those who don't live here.
And then lastly, I just wanted to clarify for the public my timeline. There was a recent news article that talked about my retirement plans, and actually the headline said that I have retired, which of course, as you can see, I have not yet. I will still be here through March. If the council finds a new city manager sooner than March, then I will start taking vacation time until mid-March. And we're working with a recruitment firm that will be getting the job announcement out in the next, I would say 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a little bit sooner than that. So more on that to come.
Item 9, department recommendations. City clerk,
Nothing this evening.
finance.
Sure. I'd like to report that I met with our sales tax consultants today with Muni Services, and every time I think, oh, we're going to have lots of good information, then it's such a moving target that is like, wow, your sales tax is not as bad as you thought it was going to be, because the gas tax this year, as opposed to a quarter ago, is up 20 to 30 cents. So it's like, okay, well, we can't really compare the gas tax. So I tried creating spreadsheets. They did give me access to a lot of great information today. So now I can go in and create these reports. So hopefully I'll have lots of great reports for you next time, but today was a little bit hectic, but I was able to create one, and I was able to pull some information, and so the just looking at service stations, the first quarter of 2017 versus the first quarter of 2016. And I'm looking at both our half-cent sales tax and our 1% sales tax. Just the sales tax that we are going to receive is $110,000 less this for that one quarter that the city is going to receive. So I mean, it's a pretty healthy decline. So, but then
unhealthy.
Yeah, but then there's other things that are happening, and our food markets are growing, and our restaurants are doing well. So I don't want to sit here and be a negative Nelly either without all of the information, but just looking at the report that's in front of you, if you're all looking at this, you can see that the first quarter is the worst quarter that we've had in the last 10 years.
And again, this is January through March of 2017.
Yes.
Well,
So,
one side thing is it was a rainy winter, which could explain, something. Because we had very little rain in previous years, and people don't drive a lot in the rain. That could be the thing.
yeah.
Just looking positive.
All right, legal.
Can I just also, it'd be great to have these compared to each classification, because one of the things I just noticed here is that business to business is, the last 2 quarters are really low compared to all the previous years. The little green thing.
You want one for just business to business? Is that what you're saying? One for each one?
Yeah. So because now the chart moves this way, you get to see each one. Anyway, that one just happened to pop out at me, that I wonder why we don't have as much business-to-business the last 2 quarters as we have previously.
Great. And I can have that answer for you at the next council meeting as well. One other thing before we move on, and that is I would like to schedule our Finance Committee meeting for August 15th, if that.
16?
15.
15.
It's a Tuesday afternoon.
What time are you looking at, Susie?
I like to do 3:30 or 4, but I will work around other schedules if that doesn't work.
Is it, you'll home in on that a little bit and let us know.
If there's a time that works better for someone, let me know.
Me and Larry there, and maybe you have some, maybe you can have a clearer picture on this.
Yes, absolutely.
And you said 3:30 for now?
Yes.
All right. Human Resources, you're up, Karen.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to remind everybody that we're having our blood drive on August 3rd, which is a Thursday, from 12 to 6, and Friday, August 4th, from 9 to 3, right here at the community center. This is going to support and honor one of our long-term Willits residents as well as an employee. I do have several slots available if you want to either donate blood or donate your time assisting with the blood drive. Madge, I already spoke with you. Thank you, Jerry. You went ahead and signed up, and I appreciate that. But I do have several slots. We do have to have at least 90 donors in order for them to come to Willits. We are advertising in the Willits Weekly. It's on our webpage. I want to say thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, who also put out some information. Unfortunately, they put out my wrong email, so if you need to get a hold of me, it's kstevenson with a V at cityofwillits.org. We are also hoping to do a PSA on our local radio station. So again, if anybody needs to sign up, I have a sheet available. We'll take your blood, we'll take your time, and if you want to donate goodies that people are going to be using while they're resting in our cantina, I appreciate that. Again, my email address is kstevenson@cityofwillits.org, or you can call me directly at 707-459-7176. So if you want to meet me after, come sign up. Thank you.
All right. And community development.
Good evening, council members. It's been very busy, but there haven't been any really big events in any one corner. Obviously, the ADA upgrades have taken a lot of my time. We're coming down to a conclusion on those. Hopefully, everybody's fairly happy with the improvements. I think, honestly, I want to thank our engineering department. Jeremy Ronco did the design work out here, and I think he did a great job. We have probably early next week, the signage will go up. We have a little bit of alteration to do these handicap parking spots. That'll happen this Friday. Sometime probably as much as 2 weeks from now, we'll be addressing the entry to the Justice Center. That's the one thing we haven't finalized plans with the county yet on that, but that entrance, we do have need to upgrade that entrance over there to current ADA standards. In the building department, things are looking up. I'm getting busy. I've got a couple of very large rolls of plans for some fairly significant projects on my plan check table, so we're headed in the right direction there. Code enforcement has been fairly uniform and quiet. It's the regular stuff that we always deal with, nothing fancy out there, and no big volumes of anything. Let's see, North Bay Solar, really, I want to support what Adrian said about North Bay Solar and John Takis. He's providing a 5.5 kW PV solar system for the roof of City Hall here. It's got an estimated value of $15,000.
Is that going to take care of most of the building's requirements?
No, it won't. But there are long-term plans to expand this system. It would probably, I'm guessing, a third of our
Yeah,
use.
I seem to recall it was a 30 kilowatt, when I looked at it before, but maybe required.
Yeah, I think that's more accurate.
Yeah.
We're looking into replacing the antiquated electric vehicle charging station on the corner with a modern electric vehicle charging station so that we can accommodate the new cars that are being sold and apparently in record numbers.
Aren't we getting some charging stations through Caltrans in the city?
Through MCOG.
MCOG?
Yes.
Is that still one?
Yes, we are. And there's some other working groups working on charging stations as well. But as you know, we're real light on charging stations in Willits. They've got some pretty impressive charging stations down in Ukiah at this point.
Yeah, Tesla.
I want to say Frontier Days, we're starting to wrap that project up. I'm starting to work with the insurance adjuster on getting the bills paid there. And let's see, and Councilperson Rodriguez has quietly been going about an incredible improvement to the Bechtel Grove Middle School gymnasium. That gymnasium with the adult leagues that have been in there at night, it's taken some punishment. It's had quite a few holes in the drywall due to high velocity balls running into the walls and things. And so Sabrina's taken it upon herself to make the repairs to it, but to go the next step and armor the second tier all the way around the inside of the gymnasium with plywood so that people get overzealous in their play, they're not going to knock holes in the walls anymore. I think when she's done, we really got a debt of gratitude owed to her because they're improvements that have been 30 years overdue. And it's really going to look nice and it's really going to perform well. So that's about it.
Thank you, John.
Good evening, council members, Dusty Dooley, city planner. I just wanted to report on a few things, and I'll try to keep it fairly quick. The city's partnered with the Safe Routes to School National Partnership and Berkeley Safe Trek to update our Safe Routes to School plan. And we actually had our Safe Routes to School launch workshop earlier today. It was well attended. We had about 20 or 30 folks, including some of our talented young kids in the community, all the way from seniors in high school down to maybe about the 10-year-old age. And they participated completely in today's workshop. We are hoping to update our Safe Routes to School plan, identify some priorities for some Safe Routes to School projects, and then hopefully use that to garner some grants and some funding sources to complete those improvements. This is a free cost to the city that involves minimal staff time, and that's probably what led us to go ahead and take advantage of their offer there. So I'll continue to report out on that. Revive Ed met. We solely discussed the new civic-type billboard that'll be hopefully located on the back end of Spare Time property up against the bypass there. We've come up with the size, standard design, wooden structure, and we've got a current cost estimate of about $35,000. So the next step, of course, is to figure out how to pay for it. So we're looking to partner with the chamber and other community organizations, and possibly look at the city pitching in as well. Also looking for grant opportunities, talking to folks like Caltrans and others to see if those are out there. And then probably once we get a good idea that we've got the funding in place, we'll start getting closer to a final design, and again, bringing that in front of the council for consideration. So as soon as we can find funding, we'll certainly be looking to establish that billboard sooner than later. Then lastly, you should have a memo from staff explaining the next steps in order to approve a cannabis ordinance and start issuing licenses for various cannabis businesses that are authorized under the ordinance. Thank you for the feedback at the previous council meeting. We're making those recommended changes, and then finalizing the CEQA document. The initial studies is required by CEQA, and looking to bring that back to the council on September 13th is the goal, and that's recognizing that we have to have that all completed and public notice provided at least 21 days ahead of that council meeting. The ordinance would go into effect, would be introduced on the 13th and potentially adopted on the September 27th meeting, and then the ordinance would go into effect 30 days after council adoption. I do want to note that writing the ordinance and getting the CEQA document isn't the end for staff. We still need to continue preparing applications, looking to educate applicants, educate our own staff as to what their expected role is in processing these applications, and then certainly developing fees for the council to consider adopting. At this point, we're probably looking at cost recovery similar to what we introduced at the last fee schedule meeting. If the uses continue to be permitted uses, we're simply looking to make sure that an application is consistent with the applicable standards that are identified in the ordinance, and that would expect to be about a 2 to 3 week period to process those applications. I put here at the end of the memo, and I'll say it out loud, that if a prospective applicant's looking to fast track the project, the best thing you can do is provide a complete application that includes all the information we need to ensure that the project is consistent with the identified standards. And if you can do that and it's not a back and forth, then you're helping to expedite your permit. So.
Have you been having conversations with potential applicants?
Every day.
Okay, so they're staying on top of this and working with you, even though they're not actually applying yet?
No, there's no application process at all. We're just keeping them knowledgeable of the current draft ordinance and any potential changes.
Good. Are you getting a lot?
Yes.
Good.
And that's, unless there's any other questions, that's what I was prepared to share tonight.
Thank you, Dusty. Public Works and Engineering, do you have anything to report out?
Nothing further.
Okay. I guess City Council and Committee reports. League of Cities will meet August 18th. MCOG? Didn't meet. EDFC?
Didn't meet.
MSWA?
They will be meeting this Friday, 9 o'clock, right here. And today and tomorrow, they're doing interviews for the new manager. So maybe on Friday, we'll have a progress report on that. And the last meeting was, and by the way, this coming Friday is the last meeting that Louisa Morris will be the general manager. She, we purposely had a meeting before she left. But the last meeting was June 29th, and there was a very interesting presentation by the California Product Stewardship Council regarding the disposal of pharmaceuticals, all the sharps and the prescription drugs and all that kind of stuff, and how there's been kind of a lack of consistency, and the desire is to have it so that the manufacturers of all those things are required to cover the costs of recovering them again, and that all of the places that sell have a convenient place for people to dispose of that. There's all sorts of regulations about not having, it can't go into the regular waste stream. You have to have 2 people to make sure that products are taken from disposal into whatever transportation. You can't. So anyway, it was really interesting to hear what a challenging and important area that is with the disposal of all these pharmaceuticals. And then there was also an item which I was seeking clarification on, but I haven't gotten it yet. That was that the new MSWA manager will be exploring a 3-way contract between Willits, the county, and Brook Trails with SWOW to how to handle the Willits transfer station contracts, so that, because it really affects all of those entities, the city, the county, and Brook Trails. So that is, right now, 3 separate contracts, and they're looking at a way to combine that. And then there were some other things about, Point Arena and Ukiah and Fort Bragg, and the county's contract, but the ones that affect city.
Thank you, Mitch. MTA.
MTA meetings are held on a schedule throughout 4 different cities in Mendocino County, and I'm sad to say that since I've been on the MTA board, all 3 times that the meeting was scheduled for Willits, it was canceled due to a lack of a quorum. So the next time we have an MTA meeting, I'm going to be bringing that up with the fellow directors that I want to see our MTA meetings happening in Willits. I travel to Ukiah and other outlying areas for meetings, so I'll be advocating that we have a meeting here. I wanted to be able to invite the public and know that there's going to be a meeting here, and there are some MTA concerns, and I share them, but what better opportunity for the public to weigh in on concerns when they're in their own community. So. Thank you.
LAFCO did not meet in July and meets again August 7th. Finance Committee, it looks like we're getting that set up. Water and Wastewater Systems Committee?
Yes, it met.
And
we met. Yeah, we met, and I forgot to bring my notes.
Anyhow, it was explain the upgrades at the sewer plant and some of the new things that we're doing and coming up with to make it more efficient. The water is, the things that we need to do with the water, which is going to be covered by the 218 that will be passed one of these days, and we'll be able to do whatever we need to do. Anyhow, it was an educational, especially on the sewer plant, that on all of the things that we need to do and the upgrades that we need to do and the things that are being done, and they're doing a really good job, it seems like to me. Thank you.
And we were told that there will be another test well drilled near the existing, are we calling that the Elias well?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be sometime next month, I believe.
Yes.
And we're going to see how it's going to work out. I wrote everything down. I just forgot all. As I pulled into the new parking lot here, I got so confused and I forgot that I bring it with me. Do you recall anything?
I apologize.
Let's see. We have the updates. We talked about the test well.
I mean, the only other thing we kind of danced around was the Little Lake water basin thing that we kind of discussed, but that was sort of put on hold. So I don't know if there's any point in even discussing it at this point. Is there?
I don't think we have any information to really share at this point. Staff has a full slate of projects, and so they're just trying to tackle the projects on their plate, get those out of the way before they take on new projects.
Yeah.
We do have another committee meeting scheduled in October 18th, I believe, and some of these projects that they're currently working on should be done at that point. So if there's interest in discussing groundwater management system, I expect it'll come up at that committee meeting.
Basically, just a brief summary was a concern that of the safety, the protection of the water basin in the Little Lake Valley, you know, with what's been going on in the state with the depleting the basins, and the state has a mandate that certain water basins, the large and medium importance, have to have a plan, have to have a water district developed by 2020 and a sustainable management plan by sometime after that. And ours is too small, so we're not on that list, but I felt it was important for a lot of reasons to protect our water and do our own, even before we were asked for it. So that was what that was about.
It's if I may add, it's a long-term plan, and again, just trying to get some of the current projects out of the way before we have to focus on such a large and long-term project. It certainly has merit.
Adrian, would you explain, because I can't explain it, that the state has taxed us or whatever, that every city in California, X number of dollars for the water that we use or we give to each one of the people?
Oh, yeah.
It's a service connection fee, and it's a new fee that the state imposed sometime in the last few months. And the initial invoice that we got was for in excess of $10,000. It's based, there's and I don't have the figures in front of me, of course, but it's based on the number of connections you have. The first 100 are included in the flat rate, and then from there, it's based on the number of connections you have, and it's essentially a new administrative fee that the state has put in place. We had the opportunity to apply for a discount because we're a disadvantaged community, and that was granted. So it cut in half what we would have had to pay.
So we get to pay the state for the privilege of providing water to our customers from our water source. What's wrong with that?
That we have paid for to
Yeah, right.
to send to you, each individual person.
But other than that, it's a perfect plan.
Sounds like
I mean,
the state's just looking for some money.
You think? Yeah, right. That was interesting, yeah. It's nice to be disadvantaged, I guess. Get certain
In this
perks.
situation, but they should waive it entirely. Extra just.
You would think.
All right, Revive Ed, we obviously, Dusty reported on that, and we met, and I think there's energy there, and we have to look for money. It seems like it's our story. And then ad hoc committees, Caltrans, I think, did we report on that the last time?
Right, so we did meet with them on June 20th, and the last council meeting was on June 28th. And so we reported out at that meeting, that council meeting, about the ad hoc meeting. We do have a meeting getting scheduled for, I think it's going to be sometime next week. So at the next council meeting, we'll have more to report.
Okay. And Cannabis Committee, we haven't met since our last time, and JPA feasibility study hasn't met.
However, I have been in communication with Denise at Brick Trails, and we are going to be setting up that meeting in the next, probably September, October.
Okay, cool.
And I'm the representative, is that right?
I can't remember.
I
We
don't
put it off
recall.
so much, yeah.
I think I recall that I was, but, yeah.
If you're not,
Maybe
you are
not.
now.
Maybe oh, well, I hope it's not. I hope it's not when I'm in Armenia or Azerbaijan.
You're gonna love it.
All right. And Museum Advisory Board.
There weren't enough members there for quorum, and Allison Glassy is still not well. But I do want to mention that I have on the calendar for August 19th that the museum is having their gala event. So that marked on your calendar to attend, and hopefully we'll have more information to bring at the next meetings.
All right.
August 19th.
Council member reports and recommendations. I'll start over there. Do you have anything?
Just that I'm excited about a bunch of different things that are going on. I'm excited about the tourism board that we're putting together, and I hope that the city supports that. We had talked about how we might participate in that, and we have one position that would be on that board. I would hope that, and hoping to form it, that I would be the one, but we also decided that going in line with how appointments go, that the mayor would appoint that position as well. So keep me in mind, Jerry. And then, like John Sherman said, I've been busy working on a project over at, a lot of people refer to it as the middle school gymnasium, but really it's the community gymnasium, and it has a name. It's called the Tom Tilton Gymnasium, in honor of Mr. Tilton, who was a longtime teacher and wrestling coach at the middle school. The middle school uses it during the daytime, but in the evenings and on the weekends, it's a very busy community gym, the most used, I believe, facility or definitely gymnasium here. And it was in pretty bad shape, and I have a tentative date to confirm for a reception that you're all invited to, and it's going to be on August 18th at 2 p.m. at the gymnasium. We're just going to have a reception and let you enjoy the new aesthetic changes that we made to the gym.
What time was that again?
2 o'clock. And CC over at Howard Hospital has generously offered to put a flyer together for me so that we can make sure that we get it out to all of the community to come and attend. And I hope it's the beginning of many projects to improve our community. I know there's been many before. This is just my big first one, but.
Well, thank you for taking that on.
Yeah.
Mitch?
Well, the Willits Economic Localization is continuing to try to promote the, not only sunflowers, but other kinds of plantings with colorful, pollinator-friendly plants, so that's part of my concern about landscaping. And we also are co-sponsoring a blues festival, Blues and Brews, Little Lake Blues and Brews, that is going to be August 19th and 20th at Recreation Grove Park, that Puba is the main organizer of, and he's gotten some really great blues bands lined up, and it's a benefit for the food bank. So that's kind of a cool thing. And so if you like blues and booze, and you want to benefit the food bank, yeah. So I think that's what I have to report.
Ron, do you have anything?
No.
Larry?
What's that?
Do you have anything to report? I sent my fellow council members a memo. John Sherman and I attended a community meeting at the senior center. Apparently the new owners at Wagon Wheel Trailer Park and also out at Valley Oaks. Apparently, I believe it was the 12th, we went to that meeting, and in the morning, Georgianne Krosky attended that meeting. It seems like the majority of the folks from out in the county were at the morning meeting. The evening meeting was attended by folks here in town. There were some folks from the county there. Both John and I explained to the group there that we don't have jurisdiction over a lot of things involving trailer parks. It falls under the purview of the state. There was, I guess, issues regarding future rent increases and I guess time limits on cleaning up the place and extensions people wanted. As a result of that meeting, I did meet with one of the managers of the it's Boa Vida group that are managing both parks. They apparently own a lot of parks in California and apparently are trying to acquire more. And he brought some of the extension letter request they had gotten, and he had indicated that they had granted extensions, that they also are working on or have in place some sort of rental assistance program, because I raised a concern, we do have a lot of seniors and low-income people there, living there, and he seemed very amiable. We had a nice exchange, and told him that at this point, we would obviously be listening to our constituents, but at this point, as far as the rules at the park and how that's going, it's up to the state, and they have a program in place to hear complaints. And I think the rest of it's in my memo as far as what came up. So if you're approached by members of the public, that should summarize what's happened so far. So, and that's all I have there. No ordinances, any good and welfare? No.
I just wanted to comment, some of you may have noticed the landscaping work that is taking place in front of the Arts Center, and the Arts Center has really done such a great job over the last couple of years revitalizing the facility and bringing in new shows and new programs. One recent new program is the ceramic studio. But the landscaping is being mainly done by Dave Watts. Dave he's just a tremendous jewel and resource in this community, and so I just really wanted to express appreciation to him for all that he contributes. He's certainly a great resource to the city and someone that we call upon for guidance.
And if you happen to go to the Sanhedrin Nursery, he will answer some questions for you. Sometimes information overload, but he's definitely a resource. So, and I think the only other good, I guess to throw out there, we have the garden party coming up on the 26th. 26th, thank you.
Starts at 4 o'clock.
So that's out there. All right, we have one closed session item, public employee performance evaluation, city manager, and we'll report out if there's any